All right, you fired up for the Ninth Island Showdown?
Yeah, no, it's going to be really exciting. I think that obviously this is a matchup that every year here in Las Vegas is really exciting and one of the more look forward to sporting events for a lot of locals. And so I think by default this game would have a little bit higher attendance and a little bit higher viewership. But I think with the direction that both of the programs, UNLV and Hawaii, are going on right now, I think this is going to be one of the more anticipated matchups between these two teams in at least a handful of years.
So you can watch the game tomorrow on Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network, and not to insult Matt, kind of digging myself. Don't watch us. Go to the game. Go to the game. It's going to be a great environment. If you've never been to a UNLV Hawaii game, they're incredible. The Hawaiians are incredibly passionate. They will turn out. So it's going to be great on that front. Fill me in on the detail. Is Hawaii doing its own broadcast with its own announcers, and then we're doing a separate one? Because I never really understood this, and I was starting to think last week, because we got the go-ahead on this about 2 weeks ago, that we were doing a TV call. And I was thinking, like, crap, are we being beamed back to Hawaii? Are we the guys doing the call? Then I'd have to be like 50-50 on Hawaii, and I really don't want to be 50-50 on Hawaii.
Yeah, if you want to be as Hawaii as you can, no big deal, because, Hawaii is unique in the sense that they have a pay-per-view, quote-unquote, set up for all their games. So they actually have the rights to all the games before anybody else in the conference. So we're definitely fortunate that we're getting this separate broadcast. It might be the most broadcasted game in the Mountain West this year. You're going to have two separate radio crews, two separate TV crews. My man Scott Robbs and Josh Pacheco are doing live reactions in Hawaii on their flagship station as well. So there's going to be something like 4 different broadcasts at least going on of this game right now.
Matt Neverett, he's the host of the Cover 12 podcast. That's the official football podcast of the Mountain West. So let's break down some Mountain West games, and then we'll get back to the Ninth Island Showdown. Utah State is in what a weird position. Are they favored in this game after the kind of season they've had so far? Am I reading that number right? What's the number on it, John? Am I reading it? Did I flip it? They're at UConn. The way I read it earlier tonight, I still can't believe it.
Yeah, they're 4-point favorites.
Yeah, they're 4-point favorites. What do you think of this one, Matt?
It's an interesting matchup. It's two teams that really have not started out how they've wanted to. UConn comes in looking for their first win, their own 4. Utah State losers of 3 out of their first 4, and with the question marks at the quarterback position because of the injury to Cooper Lagai was McKay Hillstead, who made his first career start last week as they lost to James Madison, and it was kind of an up-and-down performance. I mean, he had to throw 47 times in his first collegiate start, and you really, even no matter what your offense is, you never want to have a young freshman making 50 throws in his first ever start, in front of the lights, in front of a really good and certainly respected James Madison team coming out of the Sun Belt. And so for Utah State, I think it's going to be about mitigating the expectations for Hillstead. He's basically leaned on Terrell Vaughn in each of the 2 games that he's played in so far. He's gone to him a ton. And the other thing, too, is stylistically, this is a matchup of 2 teams that like to slow it down. They really have a lot of time of possession for both, but they've also both turned the ball over a lot here early in the year, which I think is pretty indicative of the records for these 2 sides and kind of why they are where they are. It is surprising to see, a quote-unquote bigger team come into Utah and be a slight dog, but this is a Jim Moore-led UConn team that really has not shown much of anything. They got trounced by Duke. The Dukies are all right, but this is going to be an interesting matchup. I think it's a good spot for Utah State to really control the game and get their first real dominant win of the year.
All right, Boise State on the road against Memphis. This is actually one of the more fascinating gambling games because on Sunday when it opened up, one spot had Boise State -3 on the road, another had Memphis -3 on the road for a brief moment. So 2 teams favored in the same game. Go figure. Taylor Green, Matt, has not played that well. If you look at some of the underlying metrics, what do you make of this spot for the Broncos on the road?
They're coming in hot. They lost their first 2 games against quality opponents. They got trounced again by both Washington and UCF before coming back with wins against North Dakota out of the FCS and a big win against San Diego State. And I think that kind of win buoys them with confidence, and I think that's the kind of game that Taylor Green can build upon. You're always going to have the rushing attack with him and with this Boise State offensive line always being rock solid. And this is a game for Boise State, kind of where are we? A litmus test game for this side. And, I kind of wish that we could get a bet on both sides now, get some plus money guaranteed victory. But, yeah, this is one where it's a matchup of these two teams that really never play. And they both had some interesting starts. Memphis is coming off of a loss last week to Missouri. There was 6.5-point dog in that game. And, it's kind of one of those, this is a show-me game, if you will, for especially the bookmakers. But for a lot of teams in the Mountain West, to see how seriously the preseason favorite Boise State really should be taken heading into conference play. This is their last non-conference game of the year. So I think for Boise State, this is a game where they're going to look to make a statement. Obviously, you want to make a statement every week, but this is the kind of win against a kind of non-conference opponent that can really, springboard a strong start in conference play where, they're still up for the Mountain West championship, especially with the new championship layout. And this is a Boise State team that if they can get in the right direction heading into conference play, they're absolutely going to be dangerous as expected.
I'm a man who admits when he's wrong, and I think I was dead wrong on this Cowboys team. I didn't think they were going to be very good, but they've been really impressive through 4 games. What do you do with them? Because they take on New Mexico, but the interesting part, Matt, is they're about to enter the teeth of their schedule with Fresno State, Air Force, and Boise State coming up. So I feel like it's a game where you can probably get in and get out, but what do you make of it?
I mean, it's the classic look-ahead spot. It's tough in conference play to say that, but with a team like Wyoming that, as you said, is defying expectations. I mean, they have been awesome. Craig Bohl has done a phenomenal job with 2 different quarterbacks leading the charge throughout the season. And we talked about their matchup against my alma mater, App State, last week, and that turned into yet another close game for the Mountaineers, and Wyoming ultimately pulling it ahead. That win shows that they can go in, take care of business, especially when playing at home against a team that, really should have won. App State was almost wire to wire in that game, and Wyoming, had the wherewithal and the strength within to come back and clinch that game close. And I think this is a New Mexico team that is certainly surprised, especially on the offensive end when you compare it to last year. I think New Mexico and Colorado State have made 2 of the biggest leaps forward in the conference in terms of their offense from year to year, from last year to this year. But this is, I think the line, something like 14 points, right? I think that this is a pretty appropriate line, especially if Wyoming gets an early lead. This defense is not one to give up a big lead against a team in New Mexico that, like I've mentioned, is improving but may not be on the same level, especially in the trenches against this big, physical, and well-disciplined Wyoming squad.
Cofield Co previewing the weekend in Mountain West Conference football with the host of the Cover 12 podcast, Matt Neverett, of course, one of the voices of the Aviators, and you'll see him on the TV broadcast. He's the TV voice of the UNLV Rebels with the game tomorrow kicking off at 1 o'clock. I don't like what I see from San Diego State right now. The game last week against Boise, they looked small and they couldn't tackle. That's not a good combination. And now they're going against a team that wants to run the ball 75 times a game in Air Force. Can Air Force just rip the hell out of San Diego State?
I mean, as low as we've been on Boise State to start the year, I am equally as high on Air Force. They have, I wouldn't say defied expectations, but they've been a lot better in a lot of areas than some people thought. I mean, they're a team, you look last year, they led the country in rushing, they led the country in total defense. A lot of that is due to the style. Right now, they lead the country in both again, and they're building. They've got a very veteran backfield, especially with how often they rotate the running backs through. And you mentioned against San Diego State last week, the Boise State team made the Aztecs look small. And this is an Air Force team that traditionally, is a little bit smaller, but they're a lot quicker, especially on the inside, and they use that to their advantage in a lot of ways. I mean, Zach Larrier and his minimal passing attempts this year has been phenomenal. The efficiency always going to be there for a Falcon quarterback. And, I do think that they are really going to be able to do whatever they want offensively against San Diego State, and then with the way that they play stylistically, slow the game down, limit the number of possessions for both teams. I do think that this number is right. I think Air Force is a real team to look out for, and don't be surprised if they crack the top 25 here in a couple of weeks, especially if they roll this week and the next week.
I like to admit, like when I'm wrong. Like I said, I also like to say when I'm right. And Fresno State's a freaking wagon. They're awesome, but they're big favorites, Matt, against a Reno team that has actually kind of been competitive, oddly, over the last few weeks. What do you make of this match? 24.5 point spread.
I see, and that is a big number, especially in a conference game. I know that Nevada has the longest losing streak in FBS right now. But Fresno State, as you said, JVT, they are hot. They are a wagon, in your words. And I really don't see this team slowing down at all. Jeff Tedford has done a phenomenal job of motivating his guys here early in the season, taking care of business, not just winning games here early in the year to start 4-0, but dominating. And that's what you got to do in a conference like the Mountain West to garner a top 25 ranking. And I think that some teams, they crack that top 25 and they sit back on their laurels and they're ready to go. But I think this is like I said, an extremely well coached team against Nevada that's just looking for something. I mean, they haven't won a game in over a year, and the Bulldogs, we expected them to be good. They were voted in the top 3 preseason, but yeah, like you said, I think they're a little bit better, especially given the fact that they had to replace so many players on the offensive side of the ball specifically. The quarterback has been dominant, the running game has been phenomenal, and then the defense just kind of doing what they've needed to do in these wins because they've been out to some big leads early on.
Nighttime showdown tomorrow, Hawaii in town. Allegiant to take on your Run Rebels. Matt Neverett is on call on the TV side. All right, tell me what's going to happen in this game.
Well, I think it's going to be a physical game, that's for sure, especially with a lot of the back and forths, not only between the players, but between the coaching staffs. And I think that, in an early season conference lifter, you don't typically see the kind of statements that have been going back and forth with the media from both sides. And as we mentioned earlier, it's going to be a packed house, especially with both of these teams trending upwards from where they've been. I think stylistically, of course, with the run and shoot, the Rebels' passing defense is always going to be under fire. And the couple of injuries on the defensive side are really going to it's either a make or break. There's some guys are going to have to step up or figure it out, because the loss of Jere Williams in the short term, I don't think a lot of people understand just how pivotal and flexible he is within this defense, both coming up and playing the rush game, rushing the quarterback, but also dropping back in coverage, and just some of the skills that he has from that outside linebacker, safety-ish position. So it's going to be a lot of questions as to how they replace that. Jet Elad, who had been backing up Jere Williams, I think has been a bright spot, kind of undercover. He's one of those guys where when you're at practice, you see, there's Nine. Nine's always making a play. He's always got a hand on the ball. So I think that he is absolutely capable of replacing Jere Williams, but it's going to be tough. And I think that's early on especially going to be a big one. I mean, you talked to Coach Odom for his coach's show yesterday, and he had said, winning that battle at the line of scrimmage and matching Hawaii's passion are going to be two of the big things that lead UNLV to victory in this game. A lot of it, too, is going to be keeping Jordan Mayava clean, keeping him protected, and letting him get through his progressions and starting to kind of really get into this go offense. We haven't seen too many of the quote-unquote gadget plays, but I think against a team like Hawaii, they really could start to bust something out like that.
Matt, excellent as always. We'll see you on TV at the stadium tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network, and then check out the Cover 12 podcast, official Mountain West football podcast. New episode dropping on Tuesday.